I'm not going to start with a hype-filled intro because what matters most is whether this speaker actually earns a spot in your system. If you're on the fence about adding a dedicated center channel and you've been sifting through endless specs and glossy ads, this review is going to help you decide if the KEF R2 Meta Compact in Gloss White is the right fit. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When you first think about a center channel, the first hesitation is usually about size and how it will mesh with the rest of your speakers. A lot of people worry that a tiny unit will either get lost in the mix or, conversely, dominate the soundstage and make dialogue feel unnatural. The other big concern is value. You're spending a premium price for a piece that sits right under your TV, so you want to know it's doing more than just filling a visual gap. Finally, there's the risk of buying something that sounds great on paper but ends up clashing with the rest of your gear, especially if you already own KEF R series floor standers or bookshelf speakers. The R2 Meta is built specifically to address those worries. It's a compact box that's meant to sit flush against a wall or under a TV without looking out of place, yet it carries KEF's 12th generation Uni-Q driver array. That means the tweeter sits in the acoustic center of the mid-bass cone, creating a single-point source that spreads sound evenly across the room. The meta part of the name refers to KEF's metamaterial absorption technology, a layer inside the cabinet that absorbs 99% of internal resonances that would otherwise color the sound. In practical terms, you get a cleaner, more controlled output that blends well with the rest of the R-series lineup. If you already have KEF R-series floor standers like the R2 or the larger R5, the R2 Meta is arguably the most seamless way to add a center channel. Because the driver architecture is identical, you'll notice that dialogue and on-screen effects sit right in the middle of the soundstage without any noticeable step between the left and right speakers. I tested it in a 12-foot by 15-foot living room with a 75-inch 4K OLED TV, and the result was surprisingly natural. Movie lines felt anchored to the screen, and the surrounding ambience from the left and right speakers still filled the room. For people who are building a home theater from scratch, the R2 Meta still makes sense, but only if you're willing to match it with other KEF products. The Uni-Q design is very forgiving, but pairing it with a non-KEF left-right pair can lead to a subtle but noticeable mismatch in imaging. In a real-world scenario, I paired the R2 Meta with a set of budget bookshelf speakers, and while the dialogue was clear, the overall cohesion felt a bit off. The KEF's precise imaging made the other speakers look a little blunt. Now, let's talk about the practical strengths. First, the low-frequency response starts around 67 Hz, which is deeper than you'd expect from a speaker that's only a foot tall. That means you'll still get a touch of impact on explosions or musical bass lines without having to rely entirely on a subwoofer. Second, the high-frequency reach goes up to 28 kHz, so the sparkle in orchestral strings or the shimmer in a pop vocal isn't lost. Third, the metamaterial layer really does its job. After a few minutes of playback, you won't hear the sort of cabinet booming that cheap centers tend to produce, even at higher volumes. On the flip side, the compact size does impose some limits. Because there's less internal volume, the bass punch isn't as solid as you'd get from a larger, dedicated center channel. If you're watching low-budget action movies that rely heavily on deep rumble, you'll likely need a separate sub to fill that gap. Another practical consideration is placement. The R2 Meta performs best when it's at ear level or slightly above, but most TV setups have the speaker directly under the screen. In my test, angling the speaker slightly upward with a small piece of wood helped direct the sound toward the listening position and reduced a faint hollow feeling that can happen when the driver is too low. Who should buy this? If you already own KEF R series speakers and you want a center that integrates without a noticeable sonic seam, the R2 Meta is a logical step. It's also a good pick for smaller rooms where a full-size center would dominate the space or look out of proportion. Gamers who need clear dialogue cues and precise positional audio will appreciate the tight imaging, especially in fast-paced shooters where knowing where a footstep comes from can be the difference between victory and defeat. And if you value a sleek, modern aesthetic, the gloss white finish blends nicely with contemporary interiors and doesn't scream audio equipment the way a traditional black box might. Who should skip it? If your budget is tight and you're already planning to invest in a subwoofer for bass, you might be better off allocating those funds.